Yeah. So I think we discussed, tentatively what the topic might be, and you just kind of like hinted at it. Um, a lot of our, polemics and apologetics are kind of centered around a few, suppositions that some people don't even like to go into and try to prove. So, um, Avery, would you like to tell me why you believe that the New Testament is authentically attributable to the people whom it claims to be written by?
Well, my main reason is because the church fathers are in consensus with the authorship, um, but also
Right. So he's asked the question, why do you believe that the New Testaments can be basically reliable? Why do you believe that they're reliable? His response is church fathers, as this guy said, church fathers as well. Oh, the first guy said church fathers, isn't it? Church fathers vouch for them. Okay.
so with that, since I'm having a conversation with the Muslims, the Quran also.
How long did it take him to go to the Quran? how long did it take him to go straight to the Quran and act like we've asked him, convince us the Bible's true? It was like second breath, one trick pony. 1 second. I think it was less than a minute.
So it attests to the validity of the New Testament. So I think that historically, traditionally we have attestation to the New Testament, and then we also have, the Quran's attestation to the New Testament.
Okay, so you mentioned something about the Quran, okay. But so the attestation of the church fathers, do you think that each independent church father or patristic writer is infallible in what they relate, or just because they relate generally the same information that they can't be wrong?
Well, I think that it's not that they're infallible because they're humans, but I'm just to to the variety of church fathers that are consistent.
It is bad connection Avery's got, so it's not my.
You're breaking up.
My stream.
I think that holds weight when all of the early church fathers agree.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, I got bad connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy needs exposure, Wesam.
How about now? Is it better now?
It still says you have one bar, but I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No, this discussion was...
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, I can hear you guys just fine.
So, and just a quick top up as well. So this discussion that they're having, it wasn't just like ad hoc, just come on alive. It was planned. It was planned like a week before or something. And Avery's out driving his car. They planned the time and everything. And he's out in his car with one bar. It's like, what?
Yeah, okay.
The disrespect.
Yeah. I hear my own echo, though.
Because he's recording you.
Okay, yeah, there we go. So you said that there is a consensus of the early church fathers. Okay, so who do you think is the earliest church father to mention that these texts were written by their authors? I'm talking about the Gospels specifically, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
I'm not exactly sure who the earliest is. The earliest that I mean, some early ones that I can think of. I don't know if these are the earliest or not. It's Papias. I don't know if he's the earliest that we have, but he's one of the earliest.
The fragments of Papias of Hierapolis, which come from supposedly from his 5-volume work, which is lost, that's from Eusebius. He's the only one that makes that quotation in the beginning of the 4th century. But the first person to actually identify that there are 4 Gospels named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John would be Irenaeus of Lyons, okay, in Against Heresies. Irenaeus is writing probably like around the year 190. 190. Prior to Irenaeus, there is not a shred of evidence that anyone knew that any gospel authors were named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Were you aware of this?
I don't.
Right. So this was the point I wanted to pull my brother up on. He asked him a good question. So he told him some solid information about the idea that Papias apparently said this thing based upon the writings of Eusebius in the 4th century. Irenaeus was the one who mentioned this in the year 190. But prior to that, there's no evidence of anyone speaking about this thing. And he asked him the question. He said, were you aware of this? Now, whether you agree with it, whether you disagree with it, is irrelevant. Whether you think it's relevant to the topic is irrelevant. You're being asked a question. Were you aware? Did you know this? Did you have this knowledge? And listen to his response.
I don't think that is what is relevant, whether or not we have earlier writings before Irenaeus
That wasn't your
to
question.
testify of the authorship of the Gospels. When we have all of the authors attributed to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John by all the church fathers in their quotes, and their students quoting them, or church historians quoting them, I think that's what matters. And also at the same time, but here's my question.
Right. So he's fumbling badly now. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's realized he's in the room with somebody who knows what he's talking about. So we know what Avery's going to do. One trick pony.
Listen, I just want to get straight to the meat of the matter. To Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, by all the church fathers in their quotes, and their students quoting them, or church historians quoting them. I think that's what matters. And also at the same time, but here's my question, because I just want to get straight to the meat of the matter. Are you saying that the
Wait 1 second though? Like when I talk, I can hear myself.
Accounts,
I think there's a delay or some echo, or there's definitely a delay on his end.
my side, yeah, I got back. Hold on.
I think it's really bad form. He's going to arrange a debate with somebody.
How about now? Is it any better?
Yeah, the audio is a little bit better, but let me see if I can still hear myself. No, I think it's good now. No, I think it's good now.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying is that, well, I was getting ready to ask you, do you believe that the New Testament gospel accounts, that's known as the gospel of the fourfold gospel, are you under the position that it's inauthentic, that it's not the true gospel?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I don't think that it's authentic. But so just I have to follow up on my train of thought, because you said that there was I think he's losing connection again, but I'll let me know if you can't hear me. Okay, you said that there was a consensus of church fathers. Okay, now there is such a thing as authorial dependency or literary dependency, and most scholars, when they look at those traditions, this is why the vast majority of critical scholars don't believe that they had any names circulating to them or any type of canonical fixed form. But those traditions that you're relying upon, the consensus, it starts with Irenaeus. Hippolytus is aware of his works. That's where he gets his information from. Julius Africanus is aware of his works. Tertullian is aware of his works. And there might have been a tradition earlier than Irenaeus, but we don't know. What we do know is that in all of the situations and the circumstances of the quote-unquote apostolic literature that you'll find in the apostolic fathers, the separate apologies written to early Christian emperors like Hadrian and Antoninus Pius, and all of those by like Justin Martyr, by Tatian, by Athenagoras, by Aristides, by Theophilus of Antioch. They don't mention any gospel authors' names at all. And when they do quote them, they're mixed with literature that we know comes from other sources. So you're saying that there's a consensus, but that consensus begins basically in the 3rd century. Why would that be a reliable consensus? If they're depending on each other, for example, like Jerome depends on Eusebius depends on Origen, they're not giving you any independent information. The closest thing to that would be Clement of Alexandria, and his his story of the origins of the Gospels is something no Christian would accept today.
Listen to what Clement of Alexandria says, what Peter said. So Christians like to say Mark is the, what do they say? Mark is the scribe of Peter, and basically the Gospel of Mark is Peter's words. You can't make this next bit up. Listen to what Clement of Alexandria says, what Peter says.
So, like, why do you place value on that quote-unquote consensus, which by the way, there is no consensus. Bishop Gaius of Rome did not accept the Gospel of John. Certain factions in the early centuries didn't accept Matthew. They didn't accept Mark. They didn't accept Luke. Yeah. Hello? Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, I was able to hear what you said. I've been trying to respond to you. But I'm on the road.
£6,
My
2 for
connection
10.
is absolutely horrible. Can you guys hear me clearly right now?
Yeah, I can hear you
Okay,
clearly.
I'm going to try to... It seems like I'm going to be having these issues for a while I'm on this road. If it continues, I'm gonna ask if we could just postpone until later on, until I get home. I get home in about...
That's fine. We could
Oh, I'm sorry, but did he know beforehand what time this discussion was?
I get home.
Yeah, this was pre-planned over the weekend.
I get home in an hour and 35 minutes. So what I'm saying is that if the connection continues to falter, I'm just going to ask you if we could just wait until I get home a little later.
But do you know what time this discussion was supposed to be?
Continue it until I don't know why anyone else is trying to jump in the conversation right now. Anyway, so
you guys are having a separate conversation. I was just asking you a separate question. Thank you.
So what's up? When you say
thank you.
So what's up? When you say we are trying to critique the consensus of church fathers that we have on the subject of the
how do you know my name? I'm sorry. How do you know my name?
They said your name.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we know each other from Clubhouse, I think.
So when they said Wesam, I connected the dot.
Say that again?
I said when they said Wesam, I connected the dot.
Ah, okay. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
So with you critiquing the method of the consensus or anything like this is still not rejecting or denying that we have a consensus within our church fathers and our church tradition that the authorship of the Gospels are attributed to the names that they've been attributed to. So I think that arguing over how the method is of their consensus or, whatever, I think that this is a minute issue. I think that we need to get straight to the meat of the matter. I discuss whether or not
I definitely disagree. I'm sorry.
You said,
yeah,
I mean, this is just abysmal. So basically, he basically said he has a consensus. My brother here, Wesam, is interrogating that consensus. And now Avery's saying, well, the consensus doesn't really matter. So wait a minute. But this was your reasoning. This was your, I believe the New Testament's reliable because it's a consensus amongst the church fathers, blah, 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 blah. When Wesam took it all apart, he just turned around and said, well, it doesn't really matter, does it? Your Quran says it's true.
I can hear you, but I can't agree with that. I mean, if let's say the
let me finish at least. I didn't interrupt.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think that we should get to the meat of the matter in talking about the authenticity of the gospel itself. You say that it's not authentic. Obviously, I believe it is. As a Muslim, I believe it's a weird position to hold that the gospel is not authentic when even the Quran attests to it. So let's try to get straight to the meat of the matter.
We'll ignore the
meat of the matter. That's a completely separate topic. You're calling it the meat of the matter is just kind of like Kind of. I'm sorry. It's really sounds like a dodge from actually having the New Testament stand on its own two legs. I wouldn't do that with the Quran. I wouldn't, appeal to some sort of like, shared acceptance or whatever. So if we can finish this conversation about the origins of the New Testament, maybe what constitutes even the New Testament, how you even begin to reconstruct it, then I'll be more than happy to talk about the Quran, its perspective on the old scriptures or whatever. So, but are you saying that even if a consensus is reached in the third century, and they're dependent upon each other, that it's most of them are dependent upon each other, and they have differing details concerning the minutiae of those of the context of the composition, that's fine. It's still a consensus that you would accept. Like, for example, I'll just give you one example. Clement of Alexandria, who was the source for Eusebius's whole understanding of how the Gospels were composed, he differs with Irenaeus. Irenaeus says that the Gospel of Mark was composed after the death of Peter and Paul, and so Peter didn't even know that there was a Gospel according to Mark. Yet according to one version of Clement of Alexandria's hypotyposes, he says that Mark was composed while Peter was still alive, and Peter did not encourage its reading. He read it and didn't like it. He didn't encourage it and didn't forbid it. Then you have Eusebius, who relates another story by...
1 second. So Clement of Alexandria said that Peter said he read the Gospel of Mark and didn't encourage people to read it. And Christians are trying to tell us that the Gospel of Mark is the works of Peter. I mean, it's just like, what? Imagine that. Clement of Alexandria, a church father who gave Eusebius all the information with regards to compositions of the Gospels, says that, you can't make this up, that Peter read the Gospel of Mark and didn't encourage people to read it. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. And then we're told to believe that, well, actually, the Gospel of Mark is the Gospel of Peter. So the Gospel of Mark is the Gospel of Peter, yet Peter told people not to read it. Where's that at?
Clement of Alexandria, and inserts his own gloss saying that he heard about it in the spirit and then encouraged it. And Epiphanius expands it even more. So that consensus is given to you by individuals who say that the apostle behind the composition of the first gospel, according to scholarship, the third, second, or third, depending on which church father you believe, was not even did not even accept the writing that's written on his behalf. Did you know any of this? Hello? Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, we hear you, Wesam.
Loud and clear.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Can you
Did
hear
you
me?
hear his question, Logic?
You cut out
Hello?
Yeah.
the last probably 30 seconds for me on my end. But I heard the gist of what you were saying, how Clement, you mentioned Clement and someone else disagreeing on basically the background of how Mark's gospel came to be, secondary, tertiary issues, where you're talking about how someone probably, and I gotta look this, I gotta verify this, but you're talking about how someone disagrees about the background of how Mark's gospel came to be when Mark wrote his gospel, yet it's still the consensus between those who disagree about the background of it that's Mark's gospel. You see what I'm saying? So you're not bringing,
first of all,
bringing a disagreement upon
I'm not conceding that there is a consensus. I'm not even conceding that there is a consensus. By the way, because the church fathers that use.
I didn't interrupt you.
Yeah, but like you're kind of misrepresenting my position. I didn't say that there was a consensus. I'm just doing an internal critique on your understanding of church history.
not misrepresenting your position. I didn't even
You did.
state your position. I'm just critiquing what you just did, the argument that you just made. I'm saying that your argument that you just made doesn't even affect the fact that they agreed that Mark wrote the gospel.
Okay, so
Gospel belongs to Mark.
So let me clarify. Let me clarify for you. Between Irenaeus and Clement,
Please, if I can, because I don't.
Yeah,
but my connection's cut down. I have to listen to you guys for a long time. I don't interrupt. So please, let me just finish. So I don't think that it's me that's dodging the meat of the issue. I didn't come here to talk about the origin of the New Testament or all that kind of stuff. Let's get to the meat of the matter and talk about whether it's reliable or not, whether it's authentic or not. And I told B when I came into this, before I came in here, as I'll talk about the New Testament as long as Islam and the Quran is on the table, which is why I'm bringing the Quran in this, so we can talk about both at the same time. I think this is a great place to talk about both. Because
okay.
You've been talking for a long time. Straight to the issue.
You've been talking for a long time, and you haven't said.
You say it's not. I'm saying that it is, and that the Quran attests to it. So let's get to it, bro.
Okay, so you spoke for a long time. I mentioned so many different things. You did. So it's just safe to assume that you're unaware of these traditions. You said you have to research them. So I'm not going to keep picking at you for, not knowing, the origin story of the Gospels. I asked you in the beginning, what makes you think that these, traditions are reliable? And you said there's a consensus. I made the claim that that's first of all, it's a manufactured consensus, meaning you're only looking at the church fathers that you accept, and then when you kind of put weight into their words, it becomes a consensus. But anybody can do that. I can take Valentinus, I can take Marcion, I can take Basilides, I can take Cerinthus, I can take Theologi, I can take Gaius of Rome, and say, look, they agreed that the Gospel of John is either corrupt in totality or not the product of the author of the Gospel of John. I say, that's my church. That's my church, and I'm sticking to it. And they have a consensus. That consensus, is of the same age. It's of the same age, late 2nd, early 3rd century, and geographically divergent enough. Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, Pontus, all of these places. And I can have the same, but that doesn't make any sense. In order for a consensus to be valid, we say like the consensus of the Sahaba, and has to have somehow a source going back to the originals. But the people that you take the consensus from, they differed in major ways. I told you, Clement of Alexandria. Okay, well, you said you didn't know anything about that tradition, but I can go even to maybe something that you do know. Like let's talk about like gospel redaction criticism, and how certain church fathers aren't even aware of certain narratives in their own gospels. So the Quran is a secondary issue. It's going to take us completely away from the historical question. Do you not want to talk about the historical question of the gospels? Is that something you're not familiar with?
Being a secondary issue is actually not the case.
Anyway, guys,
it's a primary issue here, because
I know you're enjoying that cooking. I know. But smashed it, and the rest of the debate is just Avery wanting to talk about the Quran, the whole thing. Just want to talk about the Quran. Now the thing is, you see, that information was very, very powerful, and I'm going to learn it, and I'm going to fashion it, and I'm going to, like I say, weaponize it, and I'm going to utilize it, and I'm going to teach you how to utilize it.